to order. We have one bill on the docket, and then we have some housekeeping items to take care of. Representative Pinto, we appreciate your patience. If you want to come before us and present your bill. And I'm going to move House File 2867 to the General Register.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members. House File 2867 addresses a gap in the Data Practices Act. So Section 13.591, which is referenced in the bill, is a section that describes the privacy, or kind of sets the privacy level of a data submitted by a business for a public benefit, is the term. And the cities and counties and state agencies as well operate a number of programs that provide certification for small businesses, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, et cetera, to make sure that the procurement happens to certain levels to those businesses. And IPAD had issued an opinion a couple years ago that indicated that the information provided by those businesses may not be covered by that public benefit language in subdivisions 1 and 2. Anyway, all that the bill does is simply says that that information submitted by those businesses is in fact covered by those other subdivisions, and I do testify, Madam Chair.
Great. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Decidra Jones, and I serve as the Manager of Business Inclusion and Business Compliance for the City of St. Paul. In that capacity, I also serve as a board member for the Central CERT Certification Program. In the state of Minnesota, there are 3 certification programs for small businesses. You have the local, which is the CERT program, which I'm here representing, the state targeted group / economically disadvantaged, and then the federal disadvantaged business enterprise program. All those certification programs have various application processes where businesses have to submit a number of different documents for certification. In your packets on the right side of the folder, there's a list of all the different documents that are submitted for the Central CERT Certification Program. Of all of those documents listed on that paper, the only thing we're looking to cover is dealing with the financial information. So for these small business inclusion programs, to determine if a business is small, we do have to require them to submit various financial information. Currently, under the law, there is no protection in the state of Minnesota for such information in terms of privacy. For other certifications in the state, there is protection, as well as other jurisdictions and at the federal level. So what this bill will seek to do is offer that protection for this information. A number of businesses applying have decided not to apply because they consider this to be a barrier and would not otherwise present this information if not applying for this certification. And so what this bill would do would offer that avenue to streamline between both the local and the state certification program, because we have worked with the State Department of Administration in drafting this language, as well as IPAD. Since there's not yet an opinion on this, this would offer clarity for businesses seeking to apply. I'm happy to serve for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Is there anyone from the audience that wishes to speak to this bill? Members, are there any questions? Representative Albright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Pinto, could you just give us, did this come by way of recognizing an instance where this occurred, or the code was, as you said, brought to your attention?
Representative Pinto.
Madam Chair, Representative Albright, this was brought to me by the county and city, Ramsey County and City of St. Paul, though the programs go broader than those jurisdictions. And as I understand it, the concern, as Ms. Jones referenced, is that a number of businesses had said they were reluctant to apply because their tax returns become public in that case because of the interpretation that was coming out of IPAD. And I think I referenced before an opinion from IPAD. I think that wasn't quite right. As Ms. Jones said, it wasn't a formal opinion, but the indication was that they would, in fact, that the other provisions wouldn't apply, and therefore tax returns, for example, would be public, and then the businesses weren't applying.
Representative Albright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And how long are those records embargoed or remain confidential? In perpetuity, or at some point are they released or in a sense destroyed, if you will?
Representative Pinto or Ms. Jones?
Madam Chair, you know that specifically?
Certainly. So when a business applies for certification at the local level as well as the state level, we have slightly different processes, but the information generally is submitted online, and that information stays in the database. So when a business applies for certification, it's retained at this point now with the way that we're using technology in our systems. So it's not destroyed, essentially.
Representative Albright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so to that point, can a small business ever be assured that as data collection changes or data security changes, do you ever go through the process of destroying data? In some cases, it may not be pertinent any longer, or the business has changed. At what point do you determine that data is no longer necessary to be held in a secure fashion? And how do you go about identifying back to the establishment that their data has been destroyed or removed from the database?
Ms. Jones?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, to that end, when a business applies for certification, certification lasts for 3 years. However, if a business during that time something changes in their ownership or their size, then we would investigate in a business. If they're no longer qualified, they'd be removed from the program. In such instance, a business's information is no longer in our system. In addition, just specifically to the city of St. Paul, in the last 2 to 3 years, we do have data retention policies of how we're actually purging that information. So summer of last year, we had started changing how some of that information is retained, but that's an ongoing process of how we're cleaning it up over a period of years.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. And any other questions, members? Representative Runbeck?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wondered can you enlighten us on what different information would be required in the city of St. Paul to be certified versus the state?
Ms. Jones?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, as it relates to the Central Cert Certification Program and the Targeted Group Economically Disadvantaged Program, prior to July of last year, our programs were very similar in terms of the documents that we received. However, July of last year, the state adopted some policies and practices from the federal certification program. So as it relates to things that we receive in terms of certification, they are still fairly similar in terms of the general information gathered. We're looking to see if a business is small. We're looking to see if a business, if they're applying for minority-owned certification, if they're minority-owned, if women-owned. And then we'll also look at their geographic scope. So there's a difference in terms of the CERT program, which has a 15-county metro area, versus the state, which is the whole state. So there are nuances in terms of information required then. In addition, the state now will receive information pertaining to things such as a net worth and along those lines. So those are the only major differences. Besides that, we're looking at financial information to determine if small, to see if they're actually a business that's functioning, and if a business who's applying for minority or women-owned is also there. In addition, the state now has a veteran-owned certification, which this bill does address as well.
Representative Runbeck?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the information. It just seems like there's, always a lot of hurdles, and that's unfortunate. Thanks.
All right, members? With Representative Howe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to go back to that statement you just said. This does include the veterans-owned businesses now?
Ms. Jones?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, yes, it does. We did work with the state and IPAD in drafting this language, and we want to ensure, to your point earlier about the hurdles, that what we're creating tries to streamline this process a little bit more so that we're on the same page. So business applying for our certification, which does have a reciprocal application with the state to make it easier for businesses, has a more similar process across the levels of government.
Okay. With that, I'm going to renew my motion that House File 2867 be referred to the General Register. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The bill is on its way. Thank you, Representative Pinto.
Thank you,
Ms.
Madam
Jones.
Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Members, Representative Runbeck, you want to move the minutes for April 12th, 2016?
Madam Chair, yes, I'll move the minutes for.
Representative Runbeck moves the minutes for April 12th, 2016. Any corrections? Seeing none, members all in favor of the minutes for April 12th, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The minutes are adopted. Members, a couple of housekeeping items. We hope to have the omnibus bill in its first draft form out here at 9 o'clock this morning. We will come back tomorrow morning and meet at 9 a.m. An email will be sent out with all of this information, so don't worry, you don't have to remember it. For that purposes, we're following the rules that we set as a committee last year, and amendments should be drafted and I'm just going to make this highlight. The amendments need to be drafted to the DE3 amendment, and we'll also include that as part of the notification on the meeting tomorrow too, so you have those details in case you want to draft some amendments to it too. If you can make sure that if you are doing any amendments past tonight at 8 PM, if you can file those electronically and so forth. And we'll have all of this listed out, so you have all the details on it too. So with that, any questions as far as process? I don't know, Representative Johnson, any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the information. I've just expressed one concern, and that's given the significant budget cut that we're looking at for this particular committee. The House rules, I think, call for 3 days' notice of posting of agenda and that sort of thing. And though we have some flexibility on that, I think given the significance of the cut in this regard, I wish we had a little bit more notice for the public so that they could prepare accordingly. So I would just make that comment.
Well, I appreciate that, Representative Johnson. And just for members to know, you should probably plan to be here on Thursday evening as well, to make any accommodations for folks that are interested in testifying to the bill. So I plan on being here pretty much all day on Thursday and get feedback from folks on the bill as they get a chance to look it through. So any other questions, members? If not, we are adjourned.